From nobody to somebody, a journey of silent revenge. I sat there, my fork halfway to my mouth, as Victor leaned back in his chair, that smug grin plastered on his face. He'd been going on for a while about his latest real estate investment, the one he was sure would triple in value in a year. It was the same routine, the same self-congratulatory tone he always used, as if his success was the result of divine intervention, not just the luck of having money to throw around. "And what about you, Jason?" Victor's voice cut through the noise of the dinner table, his eyes narrowing with thinly veiled amusement. "Still working that 9-to-5 job? How much are you making these days? 65,000 a year? That's cute. But you know, you're too broke to ever own a house around here. Guys like you? You'll always be renting." I could feel the heat rise in my face, my stomach tightening, but I didn't say anything. Emma, sitting beside me, let out a laugh that sounded more like a nervous cough than anything genuine. It was the same laugh she always used when she was trying to please her father. "Yeah, Jason, you'll get there someday," she said with a forced smile, her hand reaching out to pat mine in what she probably thought was a comforting gesture. But it wasn't comforting. It was patronizing. And I hated it. Victor's laugh rang out again, loud and cutting. The kind of laugh that only comes from a man who knows he's untouchable. The kind of laugh that only someone born into money could make. I looked around the table. Catherine, Emma's mother, was pretending to be very interested in her wine glass, avoiding the uncomfortable tension. And then, just as the word stung, I saw it. That tiny, almost imperceptible nod Victor gave Emma after his joke, like they shared a private joke at my expense. That single movement, so small it was easy to miss, made everything click in my mind. They were a team. They saw me as nothing more than an outsider, a failure. A joke. I stood up. I didn't say a word. I just grabbed my jacket, thanked Catherine for dinner, and walked out the door. Emma followed me, looking confused, trying to explain. "You know how Dad is, Jason. Just laugh it off." But I wasn't laughing anymore. I wasn't the joke, and I wasn't going to be anyone's fool. That night, as I sat in my car, I realized something. I wasn't just mad. I was done. Done with being made to feel small. Done with the life I had. It was time for a change. A real change. No more excuses, no more waiting for the right time. From that moment on, I was going to take control of my life. And no one was going to laugh at me again. I drove aimlessly for what felt like hours, but I knew exactly where I was headed. Daniel's place. He was one of the few people who didn't look down on me, someone who always believed I could do more, be more. As the engine hummed beneath me, I couldn't help but replay Victor's words over and over in my head. "You're too broke to ever own a house. A nobody." The car screeched to a halt in front of Daniel's apartment. Without a word, I knocked on his door. The door swung open almost immediately. Daniel, ever the optimist, flashed me a knowing smile. "You look like you've got a lot on your mind. Come on in." Inside, the lights were dim, and his office was cluttered with papers, books on investment, and a dry erase board covered in notes and numbers. "I need help," I said, my voice steady, but the weight of everything I was feeling pressed down on me. "I need to change everything. Show me how to do it." Daniel leaned back in his chair, looking me over. "You sure about this, man? Once you step into this world, there's no turning back. It's not just about buying property, it's about understanding the game. The market's ruthless, and you'll need to be sharper than ever." I nodded, a fire starting to burn in my chest. "Show me everything." For the next few hours, Daniel broke down the world of real estate like a complex puzzle. How to evaluate properties, how to spot opportunities, how to leverage capital, and, most importantly, how to turn a failure into a fortune. Every word he spoke felt like a key unlocking a door I never even knew existed. When I left his apartment at 3 a.m., I wasn't just inspired, I was armed. Armed with knowledge, determination, and a rock-solid plan. The next day, I sat down at my desk, mapped out a 5-year plan, and got to work. Saving aggressively, cutting back on unnecessary spending, studying every market trend, and building connections with people who could help me get there. No more excuses. I had a mission. That evening, I called Emma. I could feel the weight of the conversation in my chest before I even said a word. "Emma, we need to talk." Her voice was soft on the other end. "What's wrong?" "I can't do this anymore. I can't be with someone who doesn't believe in me. Someone who makes me feel like I'm not enough." There was a long pause. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled. "Jason, please don't do this. We've been together for so long." I interrupted her, my heart pounding. "No, Emma. I've been trying to convince myself for too long that this was okay, but it's not. You laugh at me with your dad, you let him treat me like a joke, and I can't take it anymore." She was silent. I could almost hear her processing it. "You're being dramatic. You know how my dad is. He doesn't mean anything by it." "No, Emma," I said firmly. "It's not just your dad. It's everything. I'm done with being small, and I'm done with letting anyone make me feel like I don't deserve better. I'm doing this for me." When I hung up, something inside me clicked. It wasn't just about leaving her. It was about leaving everything behind. The self-doubt, the second-guessing, the comfort of being stuck in a life that didn't make me happy. Before I share what happened next, the moment that changed everything, let me ask you, have you ever felt like the world was against you? Drop a comment and let me know, because you're not alone in this. And if you've ever had to fight for your dreams, hit that like button. Trust me, this story is only getting started. I was ready. Ready to prove to myself that I was more than what they thought of me. More than the nobody they'd written me off as. It was time to rise. 2 years passed, but it felt like a lifetime. The fire that had ignited in me that night after dinner with Emma and her father was still burning, stronger than ever. Every day, I worked relentlessly, studying markets, evaluating properties, making moves when others hesitated. Every decision was calculated, and every move had a purpose. I started small. A fixer-upper in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I poured my energy into it, learning everything I could about renovations. YouTube videos became my best friend, and the smell of paint and sawdust became my constant companion. By the time I finished, the house was barely recognizable. I sold it for a tidy profit, but I wasn't done yet. This was just the beginning. When the housing market took a nosedive, most people panicked. But not me. While others saw a crisis, I saw an opportunity. I kept my eyes on a duplex in an up-and-coming area, one that had been sitting empty for months. The owner was desperate to sell, and I knew I could get it for a fraction of its value. I secured the deal and bought it at a price that would have made anyone else second-guess their sanity. But I wasn't anyone else. I was in it to win it. By the time I closed on my second property, my portfolio had begun to grow. Slowly at first, then with more confidence as I acquired properties that I knew I could manage on my own. The satisfaction of watching them transform from neglected spaces into homes was something money couldn't buy. It wasn't just about the profit anymore, it was about proving to myself that I could build something real. Something permanent. Meanwhile, Emma's world was unraveling. I heard it through the grapevine, Victor's latest venture had crumbled. The business empire he'd spent years building was now teetering on the edge. The properties he'd once boasted about were now liabilities. Emma was forced to leave her luxury apartment and move into a cramped, outdated space. The life of privilege she'd known was slipping through her fingers. I didn't take any pleasure in hearing about Emma's fall from grace, but I couldn't deny the irony. I had been the one dismissed as a nobody, and now, here I was, watching as they both, her and her father, fell into the very pit they'd tried to push me into. Victor's texts started coming in, first a few, then dozens. "Jason, I need your help. There are opportunities we could work on together. Let's talk." The desperation was clear in his words, but I didn't respond. Not once. Every time the phone buzzed with a new message from him, I simply ignored it. I had nothing to prove to them. They had never believed in me, and I wasn't about to give them the satisfaction of seeing me extend a hand now that I had something to offer. I was doing well, better than I'd ever imagined. My tenants were happy, my properties were thriving, and the wealth I was building was all mine. It was a quiet success, one that didn't need validation from anyone else. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about respect. And not just earning it from others, but from myself. For the first time, I knew my worth. I didn't need anyone to tell me I was successful. I could feel it with every deal I closed, with every new property I added to my portfolio. The funny thing was, the more I succeeded, the more the calls from Victor and Emma piled up. But I remained unfazed. I had no interest in their games, no interest in the pity they wanted to offer me now that they saw how far I'd come. I was still that nobody to them, but the difference now was I didn't care. I had become something they would never understand. And that, in itself, was the sweetest form of success. The phone buzzed in my pocket, interrupting my morning routine. I glanced at the screen and froze. It was Emma. I hadn't heard from her in years. After everything, after all the hurt, the silent treatment, the desperation of watching her and her father fall, it was surreal to see her name again. I debated ignoring the message, but something told me I needed to hear what she had to say. "Jason, I know it's been a long time, but I need to talk. Please, call me when you get a chance." I didn't call her back immediately. Instead, I stared at the screen for a few moments, wondering if this was some sort of test or trap. Was she trying to reach out because she needed something again? Later that evening, I picked up the phone and dialed her number, half expecting her to be surprised to hear from me. When she picked up, her voice was quieter than I remembered, softer, as if she was careful with every word. "Jason, thank you for picking up," she started, sounding almost apologetic. I really didn't expect you to." I let the silence hang for a moment before I responded. "What's going on, Emma? What do you need?" She hesitated. "It's my father. Things aren't going well for him anymore. His business is falling apart. He's in serious debt, and he doesn't know who to turn to. He's been asking for help, but no one will listen." I felt the familiar knot of frustration tighten in my chest, but I held my composure. "So you're asking me to help him?" "Not just him," she quickly added. "I know you've done well for yourself. He's looking for a business partner, someone to help him get back on his feet. I know we've been through a lot, but I thought, maybe you could help. Maybe we could start fresh. This could be a new beginning for all of us." Her words were laced with hope, but it didn't take long for me to see the cracks. The facade was so obvious. She wasn't asking for me to help Victor because she believed in his redemption, she was asking because she wanted to please her father, just like she always had. I could hear the desperation in her voice, the need for approval that still drove her every word. The old Jason, the one who would have rushed to help, the one who thought he needed her approval too, was gone. What remained was someone who'd built his life on his own terms, without their influence, without their expectations. I exhaled, not out of anger, but out of calm finality. "Emma, I'm not interested. I'm not interested in helping Victor, and I'm certainly not interested in getting involved in his mess." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. For a moment, I thought she might argue, but when she spoke again, it was clear she was trying to maintain control of the situation. "I know it's a lot to ask," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "but I thought you might understand. Please, just think about it." "I've thought about it," I said, my voice steady. "And I'm done. I'm done with all of it. I've built something of my own now, and I'm not going back." The conversation ended shortly after, with nothing more than a simple goodbye hanging between us. But as I put the phone down, a strange sense of relief washed over me. I had made the right choice. That night, I closed my third property deal, a commercial building in a prime downtown location. The numbers were solid, the potential was enormous. As I finalized the documents, I felt a quiet pride in my success. There was no drama, no fanfare, just steady growth and accomplishment. And as I looked at the paperwork on my desk, I couldn't help but think back to Emma's call. The contrast was so stark. Here I was, expanding my portfolio, securing my future, while she and her father were stuck in their old patterns, relying on people they had pushed away for so long. It wasn't a win. It wasn't even a victory. It was just reality. I had moved on. They hadn't. And that was the truth that neither of them could ever deny. Victor's empire finally crumbled. It didn't happen overnight, but once it started, there was no stopping it. The public fallout was swift and brutal. The local news ran story after story about his shady business practices, how he'd manipulated contracts, used fraudulent loans, and built his wealth on lies. It was a spectacle, but I couldn't bring myself to feel satisfaction. There was nothing sweet about watching someone else's downfall when I had worked so hard to build my own success. The phone buzzed again. It was Victor. "Jason, I need your help. Things have gone south. I've made a mess of everything, but I can still turn it around. You've got to lend me some money, help me fix this. I can pay you back, I swear. We can make this work, together." At first, the temptation to take advantage of his downfall was strong. I could have easily written him off and let him crash and burn, but I wasn't driven by the same anger I once was. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to see him suffer. What I needed, what I had always needed, was to keep moving forward, to keep building something that would stand the test of time. So, I didn't respond to his plea for a loan. Instead, I did what I knew best. I made a move that was legal, strategic, and in line with everything I'd worked for. I purchased his distressed properties. It wasn't personal. It was a smart business decision. As I took over the properties, I realized something that stopped me in my tracks. I found out that Victor had been exploiting Emma, still collecting rent from her, still using her as a pawn in his failing empire. Despite everything, he'd continued to hide assets, including her apartment, from her. He had trapped her in the same cycle of dependency and control he had always kept her in. I knew I had to make a final move, not just for my own growth, but for her freedom. I bought out the properties, including the apartment Emma had been living in. Then I reached out to her, one last time. When we met, there was a weight between us. She seemed to be carrying the same sadness I had seen before, but there was something different in her eyes and understanding. "I've bought the building you're living in," I said, my voice steady but firm. "You can stay as a tenant, under new terms, or you can move out. The choice is yours." She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing as if trying to find the right words. You bought it. You took everything from him?" "I didn't take anything from him. He had it coming. But I'm offering you a choice. Stay or leave. But you don't need to stay trapped in his world anymore." The silence between us stretched on, but this time, it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that comes with realization, with clarity. She wasn't the same person I had known years ago. The power had shifted, and she knew it. "I never realized," Emma whispered, her voice almost breaking. "I never realized how much he was still controlling me. How much I needed to prove to him. I wanted his approval." I nodded, but I wasn't angry. I was calm. "You don't need his approval. You never did. The real power lies in standing on your own." There was no grand gesture, no dramatic confrontation. It was just the truth. Emma stood up, her eyes a little brighter than before. "Thank you, Jason," she said quietly, before turning and walking away. As I watched her leave, something in me shifted again. It wasn't about her. It wasn't about Victor. It was about me, about the journey I had taken to get here. From that nobody, to someone who could stand alone, to someone who could rise above it all and move forward. The properties I had bought weren't just business deals. They were symbols of everything I had become, someone who didn't need to rely on anyone else, someone who built his own future, brick by brick, no matter the cost. And for the first time, I felt at peace. The past no longer had any power over me. My success wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about proving to myself that I could do it, that I could rise above, and that nothing, no person, no failure, could ever take that away from me. I didn't need Victor's approval. I didn't need anyone's validation. The journey had been mine, and I was just getting started.